I'm Fat Sajak, and I'm here to complain today. Welcome back to my channel. No, that's not mine. Welcome back to my channel, and if you've never been here before, it's going to be a curmudgeonly, complainy, generally myself today time. So if you hate this, bye. I'm gonna get right into today's video without much of an intro. So let me go ahead and remind you to subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter, follow me on Instagram, subscribe to my Patreon, take me to Taco Bell, whatever the hell you gotta do. So today's content is a little bit different. I'm not talking about tea or drama. I'm not talking about celebrities or influencers. No. Today, I'm going balls deep talking about defunct video stores. Before I get into all of that nonsense, I need to let you know that today's video is sponsored by adamandeve.com. We stan adamandeve.com on this channel. And if you've never partaken, sit down, take a load off, put your feet up, look me in my one good eye, and I'm going to tell you why you should. adamandeve.com has an enormous selection of adult toys, lingerie, bath and body goods, pretty much everything in that vein that you could possibly want or need. Adam and Eve has got you hooked up. Anything to make your quiet time a little noisier, you know what I'm saying? I think you do. And let me tell you a sweet little secret, my friend. If you use my code SAJAK at checkout on adamandeve.com, you can get 50% off one item. That's half off. That's more than 40%. You would be crazy to not take this deal. Plus, free shipping to the US and Canada. Some exclusions apply because that's what exclusions are for. What, you need more reasons? Okay. How about exquisite 24/7 customer service? How about no hassle 90-day returns? And 20% of all their profits go to fight HIV and AIDS around the world. If you can't get on board with that, I don't know what it is you can get on board with. If you're looking to spice up your love life, or if you're like me and you're just spicing up your alone time, head on over to adamandeve.com and order yourself something nice because you deserve it. You work hard. Get yourself a little something for yourself. Or your partner. Or your friend, or your grandma. You know, whatever you gotta do. Just get on over there. Thank you so much to adamandeve.com for sponsoring this video. Now, let's get into the meat of the video. We're gonna fight a video store that's already dead. Now, I want to be super clear before I start bitching here today that, like, I am not here to diminish or undo the progress of wokeness, because I'm not against it as a concept. I'm very much for it as a concept. I'm for progress. Let's move in the right direction. Let's look back at our past errors and do better moving forward, right? That's the whole concept of progress. Also, of the mindset that not every wrong in our past requires a 2-hour condescending thread. That is essentially just a really pretentious diatribe about how bad that thing was. Let me fill in the context here, because I can hear you going, the fuck are you talking about? Well, I'm your corporate whore for the evening, okay? And we're gonna talk about this Blockbuster situation. So the other day, someone who goes by the name C.A. Funderburg, and again, this is not an attack on this guy. He's totally allowed to have his opinions. He's totally allowed to talk about whatever he wants, the way that he wants to. I was just really irritated with this thread that he posted on Twitter. C.A. Funderburg was on the old Bird app the other day and posted this outrageously long thread denouncing Blockbuster video. One that's dead now, that doesn't exist except for the one in Bend, Oregon, and I can't even guarantee that that one's still open, and I am just not in the mood to Google it right now.
And I can keep him for 3 evenings.
Quick, Minerva, meet me behind the Woolworths. We're going to talk shit about KB Toys and Walden Books. Now, I, as a child of the 90s and as a former manager of a goddamn Blockbuster video or two, I have a few problems with this thread, and I'm going to tell you all about them, and you're going to listen because you're here. And there's no escape. You give my regards to Wet Seal and Gadzooks. Mr. Funderburg's thread reads as follows.
For the last time!
Blockbuster was one of the major drivers, if not the major driver, of censorship and suppression of cinema in the 90s. For the last time. I don't know how many times he has had to say this, but it's clearly been a lot. Also, cinema, Blockbuster carried both Geely and the Ginger Dead Man. What do you mean they didn't care about cinema? It was in league with right-wing fundamentalists. The company insisted on cuts being made to even hard R films in order to stock them. Okay. In 1991, they announced they would refuse to stock NC-17 movies, meaning that films with an NC-17 rating as tame and beautiful as Henry and June would need to produce an edited R-rated version in order to be seen at the dominant rental chain in the country. Okay, we're going to put a pin in that because we're going to come back to that point in a tweet or two. But this really already just reads like a pretentious cinephile freaking out about the fact that we couldn't find more obscure films with potentially mature content in them. But go on, sir. Or to take another example, in 1994 they refused to carry the director's cut of Natural Born Killers. If you were in one of the many towns where Blockbuster was the only option, you couldn't see this film. Something as mainstream as that. Here's the thing. We as a population, we didn't have ready access to things like that, right? Things were just simply not accessible the way they are today. Part of the joy of bouncing around from video store to video store, Blockbuster included, was to find those hidden gems. Like if you were a movie fanatic or enthusiast, cinephile, finding those hidden gems was part of the fun. Like say the director's cut of Natural Born Killers. Blockbuster didn't stock it, so you went to your other local video store and found the director's cut that you didn't know existed of Natural Born Killers. And then you were like, cool, now I get to watch that guy rip that other guy's throat right out. Fantastic. These were treasures to be found. Knowing that Blockbuster wouldn't stock films they deemed inappropriate for their family image obviously affected how the studios approached filmmaking and what they would fund. Combine this with the MPAA's well-documented history of racism, homophobia, and general incoherency, and it adds up to, on the part of distributors and producers, a conscious and deliberate suppression of voices, perspectives, and ideas, especially towards outsider and minority filmmakers. Okay, well, I don't inherently, vehemently disagree with the point he's making. I do feel like this is an entirely huge fault to place solely on the shoulders of Blockbuster Video. At the time, the most relevant thing was the box office numbers. Back in the day when we all used to be able to go see people and go to a theater without masks on, and sit down next to one another and cough into each other's mouths. You remember those days? I remember those days. The numbers brought in opening weekend were the important numbers and still the general aim of studios. In an age where Blockbuster was prevalent, we had stores dedicated to purchasing movies, which also flourished and did well. Suncoast, tell Sam Goody he's no longer welcome here. We're going to Coconuts for our afternoon bitch session. Studios didn't turn as much profit on rental as they did on purchase, because rental also has to benefit the video store. Yes, rental did add not only in numbers, it added an interest in a particular film, in a particular film. You ever try to talk and you just cannot do it? I don't disagree that the MPAA is full of dumb fucking choices and dumb fucking censorship that has certainly oppressed and suppressed voices for years. I absolutely agree with that point. There is nothing about that that I don't agree with. What I don't think is fair is putting all of that onto Blockbuster. And by the way, this is me, even though I'm dressed like your corporate whore tonight. I really am not trying to go to bat for a corporation. I will get to the larger point of this and why this article irritated the shit out of me, but we're not quite there yet. It was a fight, a real fight.
A real fight.
Get something as straightforward as Showgirls into the largest rental chain in the country, and then only in an edited version. Difficult adult and hard-edged films simply disappeared from the popular cultural landscape. It became work to find them. Yeah, a lot of things were more work back then. And I don't mean this in a condescending way, because I do believe that this person is around my age or older, based on something he says in the next couple of tweets. So I'm not trying to be condescending when I say that, but like literally things were more work back then. We live in an age of absolute instant gratification now, where we have now kind of forgotten what it feels like to have to work for something, even if that something is something pleasurable. AdamandEve.com, you know what I mean? Blockbuster's choice, maybe, not so much in the NC-17 department, but certainly in the pornography department, I never viewed that as something puritanical. And I mean, that's just my opinion, and that's from what I heard from the inside. It was always just, Blockbuster doesn't want to fucking sell porn. And if I wanted to have a night of watching porn, I could walk my happy ass over to the ironically named Family Video and get my porn. Hollywood? Did Hollywood have porn? I don't remember. Obviously, porn hasn't gone anywhere, and now it's free. I don't know, I lost my point. It's like being on the cusp of like needing to move to a plus size store and then like walking into Lane Bryant and being pissed off because you can't find a size that fits you. They have what you want, but not quite. It's not quite for you. But that store chose what it was about. You know, that store chose to be a plus size clothing store. Like, if you can't find what you're looking for in the store, you know, go to another store. This is fucking Blockbuster's fault. In the 90s, it was absurdly difficult to find films like the unedited version of Evil Dead 2. Forget about trying to find actually challenging and boundary-pushing films. Movies that featured men kissing couldn't even get stocked. Now that, I'm gonna say, is not entirely true, because you have to remember that some of these Blockbusters were franchise stores. So there were, in my Blockbusters, both of the Blockbusters that I worked at, we had quite a few LGBTQ plus sections of our stores. No. Was it part of the whole fucking chain? No. I'm sorry that you couldn't find that very specific unedited sequel to The Evil Dead, but I just think that like making this entire thread about a video store that no longer exists, in a whole landscape of video stores that don't exist, who have now died long after Blockbuster has gone, while Jeff Bezos is like in fucking space. Everything comes from like Amazon and big box stores and shit. It just feels a little trite to make this thread, in my opinion. Should we have lunch at Chi-Chi's? I could go for some Chi-Chi's. It should also be mentioned that as a corporate policy, Blockbuster only stocked a handful of classic pre-1970 and foreign films. I once counted the number of these movies my local Blockbuster had, and it was around 40. 40 movies from the entire history of world cinema. They probably had that many copies of Turbulence, It's a Killer Ride. Great reference, by the way. They heavily overstocked the most popular current releases. Seeing a wall of Jerry Maguire or The Matrix was common. They'd carry a single copy of Dead Man. Look, dude, we get it. You like obscure films. I don't know how to break it to this guy. That Blockbuster was a corporation. Like, it was. Like, it wasn't a secret then. It's not a secret now. It was a corporation. It was what it said it was. It was Blockbuster Video. Blockbuster Video. It sold videos that were films that were blockbusters.
Now this is a video store.
Are we going to knock down the doors of a McDonald's because they're not selling pizza? Blockbuster largely catered to popular releases.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
That's why they were successful. That's why they did so well for so long.
Wow. Wow.
Wow!
Complaining about a store not being the thing you wanted it to be is a little ridiculous. In my time at the old Buster, we would actively seek out large numbers of popular films because they would rent in larger numbers. I mean, it's common sense. And then over time, those bulk rentals would go for sale in what we used to call PRP, which was previously rented product. So we would take the large quantity and then sell the product. If we got smaller titles of foreign films, LGBTQ plus films, obscure horror films, obscure films of all types, we would put those out, and if they rented well, we would order more. It's irresponsible of a company whose business model is built around current and popular releases to hold a large inventory of product that is not going to move. Is it a bummer that you can't find obscure art house films at Blockbuster in 2002? Yeah, for sure. But you know what? That's not what Blockbuster's end game was. They were a corporation set up to make money selling shit that sold. If you cared about movies, if you cared about cinema, Blockbuster was your sworn enemy. As a matter of conscious corporate policy, they destroyed or bought out the local chains that would stock these kinds of movies and used their power constantly to put Hollywood over a barrel. Look, I'm not for whataboutisms by any stretch, but like, it was my understanding at the time of my particular store closing that Blockbuster owed the Weinstein Corporation a great deal of money, like millions. And that in and of itself is a problem. So like, pick your battles, I guess. But also, like, I don't understand how they're holding anyone over a barrel when they are millions and millions and millions of dollars in debt. I mean, okay, yeah, maybe prior, I don't know. I can think of 4 video stores, small mom and pop shops off the top of my head that continued to thrive in the time of Blockbuster. I think I just spit everywhere, and that's okay because it's just me. AdamandEve.com. I'm not saying like as a whole Blockbuster didn't have that effect, or I don't know the logistics of them like buying out stores or driving them into the ground, but I know that every Blockbuster I worked at 2 separate Blockbusters and 2 separate states, and both of them had other video stores in proximity that outlived those stores. So either those 2 stores that I worked at were an anomaly, or maybe it all wasn't quite as bleak as that. Welcome to Circuit City, where service is state of the art. It's not nostalgia for mom and pop shops or the cool college video store that made Blockbuster awful. It's the way they wielded their power specifically towards censorious anti-art ends combined with their Walmart-esque tactics for undercutting and flooding local markets. And make no mistake, their perspective on censorship and suppression came from a moral majority bent. They refused to stock all but the least controversial of queer cinema, got into battles over films they considered insensitive to religion, and considered all pornography immoral. And I never really viewed these things as like this puritanical moral majority type shit at the time, and I can totally be wrong. I'm not saying it's a non-issue. I'm saying that I don't fundamentally disagree. I think, and I know this is a sensitive thing to say about wrongs of the past, and I want to be clear that I'm really only saying it about this specific instance at the moment. I do think you really have to look at the time that this happened in, right? There was a lot less public, noisy pushback against religion and how it affects certain things, and its influence in situations like this, right? Again, I'm not agreeing with it. I'm still very much anti-censorship. I'm very much anti-suppression of voices and different genres of film, etc. Censorship bad, suppression bad. Let me address the pornography issue in a different way. From the standpoint, not necessarily of the movie fan, but of the former employee. When I was 16, I got my first job, like most 16-year-olds do. And my first job was in a small mom and pop video store around the corner from my house at the time. And it was a great job. for someone. The giant man who looked like Hagrid and would scare us all on purpose so that we would do our work, he was not great to work for, because we used to work by ourselves on every shift. It was just us by ourselves entirely, except for him. Except he wasn't there. He was at home watching us from a camera, and that was really unsettling. But don't worry, because we had a porn section where creepy old men, and I'm not here to admonish old men because you know I love my old men. However, these old men would go into this porn room and would be in there for an exorbitant amount of time, and then would come out and make gross advances towards my 16-year-old self, who was working alone, mind you, except for the creepy man watching me at home. And then I would have to clean up the porn room at the end of the night. Now, not every place that sells pornography is like that. Not every experience with having to sell and rent people pornography is the same. However, I will say that I started working at Blockbuster when I was 18, and I felt more safe working somewhere at like Blockbuster, not dealing with creepy men who would come in and make advances to me while they were renting out slapper and the crapper, hitter and the shitter. You know what I'm saying? Well, I'm not trying to shit on the porn industry by any stretch, because hey, porn is for everyone, right? And you know, I would never shame a sex worker. I have nothing but respect for them. I have nothing but respect for the industry. As long as everything's done right on the up and up and everybody's taken care of, that's totally fine by me. However, it says something for those of us women who've had to work in industries such as a retail with anything that can blur the lines between someone's safety and comfortability and having to clean up after someone who spent a long time in a porn room. That being said, I felt safer working at Blockbuster, and we got robbed like all the time. Thanks for letting me get that off my chest. That was 20 years in the making. Nearly every amazing film that was rediscovered in the internet era has been forgotten by Blockbuster's corporate policies. They killed movies off, the classics, foreign language films, anything violent or sexual or gay enough to push an R rating. An R rating. Good talking. Blockbuster buried them. Oh, I'm sorry, I just ordered 3 things on Amazon today. 3 completely separate thoughts. Bing, bang, boom. They'll all be here tomorrow. We didn't have that then. If they didn't have foreign films, if they didn't have certain classics, if they didn't have, you know, anything sexual or anything gay or anything, you know, anything like that, we looked elsewhere. It just was what it was. Does that make it completely right? No. The chase and the search for certain things was actually kind of cool, because a lot of times it would lead to you finding something completely different, delving into new genres, new directors, new forms of cinema, new artistry. The chase was part of the fun. Get this fucking, man, I miss Blockbuster. The 90s were the golden age of access to cinema bullshit out of my timeline. The 90s were the worst, and Blockbuster was the second worst. Jesus Christ, guy, you are gonna straight up need to see a chiropractor for the chip on your shoulder, because that shit looks heavy as fuck. What's especially absurd is that the MPAA had more or less established the NC-17 rating in 1990 to appease Blockbuster. They wanted to draw a clear line between pornography and real movies. They tried to cave into Blockbuster's demands, and it still wasn't enough. I should add the side note here that the consolidation of theater chains in the wake of Reagan's deregulation in the 80s also played a major role in the development of the NC-17 rating. Due to pressure from the moral majority, many newspapers wouldn't run ads for X-rated films. The NC-17 rating was a way of getting around this. It was pretty transparently craven, so you at least have to respect Blockbuster's integrity. They really did believe that there is no such thing as a mature movie featuring meaningful adult content that isn't pornography. Is that sarcasm? What he's saying about the NC-17 rating is true, and it's why you'd never see NC-17 movies in the theaters except in art house theaters. But But again, if that's also true in theaters, why is this Blockbuster's fault? Like, solely Blockbuster's fault. Reagan, I get. The MPAA, being in league with Hollywood, was acting with their own agenda to try to box out indie distributors and outside voices. The NC-17 was part of a strategy that fizzled when Blockbuster wouldn't get on board. The entire anti-NC-17 campaign was pushed by the American Family Association and Reverend Donald Wildman, who really crowed in 1991 about how they had worked with Blockbuster on the company's ban on the rating. Blockbuster consistently capitulated to these moral majority types. I'm not in any way advocating for censorship here, but I feel like this fellow is like looking at like a 1989 to like 2007 issue with a 2021 lens. Trust me, I would love to get religion out of everything. I'm very much an atheist. I don't judge you if you're religious. You do whatever you gotta do for you. That's you, as long as you're not hurting anybody else or yourself. I don't give a shit what you do. For me, religion, no thank you. It's really good to look at the past with the knowledge that you have today and say, oh, look at where we fucked up. How can we make this better? Not like this. If Blockbuster was Amazon, I'd say go the fuck in. And go the fuck in on Amazon. Why are we going off on Blockbuster for an issue that we cannot go back and remedy? You know, if I agreed with absolutely every word this guy said, and I don't fundamentally disagree with most of it, but if I didn't vehemently disagree with his need to tear down other people's enjoyment of something that brought them good memories in their youth or in their younger years or whatever you want, however you want to put it, I would have less of a problem with this. If this was purely informational and less ranting about how fucking stupid you must be and you didn't get cinema or like cinema because you liked Blockbuster, like, fuck out of here with that shit. I'll meet you at Pier 1 Imports. Blockbuster's dead, Chief. Let it rest in peace. Goddamn, just remembering all these assholes and these companies and Christian groups and former presidents and how much they fucking sucked. Blockbuster was on their side. They were one of them. Just remembering how Men Kissing Passionately was enough to push an NC-17 rating in the 90s and wanting to punch Blockbuster in the face. If you weren't there or you were a little kid, you don't remember how much say homophobes like the American Family Association had in everything. Yeah, dude, homophobes had a hand in everything. Fucking everything. Like, literally everything. Look at any fucking television sitcom from any time prior to like 2010, it's all homophobic. Gays were the butt of every fucking joke.
Don't, to hell with her, she left me. And you never knew she was a lesbian.
That's why people fucking hate Friends, because it's like, oh, that's problematic. Now, don't get me wrong, I fucking love Friends. I can look back at Friends and go, wow, look how far we've fucking come. Remember when gay people were the butt of the joke? Say the thing that it is, recognize it, and recognize how we've done better or how we can do better. Because at this point, you're just wallowing in the fucking past and you sound like a bitter motherfucker. Also, I just realized I've been using Moral Majority, which was a specific advocacy group founded by Jerry Falwell. Fuck you, Jerry Falwell. And then that was my edition, not his. I bet he agrees, but just the same. In the late 70s. Interchangeably with any detestable pseudo-Christian censorship advocacy group. Forgive the carelessness. And just to make one final thing clear, Blockbuster did not oversee any of the re-editing of the movies themselves. They didn't even do the MPAA thing of offering suggestions. This naturally meant producers would err on the side of really not pushing it if they cared about rental. Yeah, again, I agree, but the perspective is wonky at best. If you go back even farther, go back to the fucking Dick Van Dyke Show, where the couple slept in separate beds, right? You could say the same. They were giving in to censorship. People at home didn't sleep in separate beds. That was part of censorship, but we've made progress since, and Mike and Carol Brady got to fuck a few. No, they definitely didn't fuck. And just to explain the hard R assertion, Blockbuster would in some instances stock unrated movies. This was tricky because a lot of unrated films had content that clearly violated their no porn, no NC-17 films mandate. So the strategy they devised was to not stock any unrated films that would have gotten an NC-17 if they had been rated. Well, who the hell knows what Blockbuster felt would have gotten an NC-17. Better to err on the side of editing your film down so as not even to push that boundary. Yeah, unrated movies were a thing, and again, I don't disagree, but we're going to take that pin out from earlier because we're going to talk about this real quick. I think it's another important point to point out how the MPAA has changed in terms of ratings. You know, typically with a PG-13, the old standard used to be you get like a handful of shits and a fuck, right? So you could say shit, I think it was like 3 times. I don't know the exact standard. I could look it up, but again, where's the fun in that? And then that was it. If you pushed it any farther than that, you had an R rating. To show you how absolutely absurd MPAA ratings are, the movie Airplane has a rating of PG, and there are tits in that movie. So, like full on, just tits. And the point of the scene is the tits. Like, tits. Just tits. Tits.
And I can keep him for 3 evenings.
Among other things. Like, by today's standards, Airplane should be probably rated R. However, over time, things change. Progress changes. You know? Furthermore, every movie, for the most part, typically with a PG-13, rated R, NC-17, whatever the case may be, typically has a censored version of their film where an actor will go in and do ADR for dialogue that, you know, obviously that couldn't be heard or was a little muffled from background noise, or if they messed up a line, or if they couldn't clear like a name and they needed to overdub it, or if they needed to censor words to show things on
television.
You see, they've been showing movies on television for quite some time. And again, while I still don't agree with the general scope of censorship, it exists right now. And when you show movies on TV, they need to be censored as well. So again, putting the fault entirely on Blockbuster and saying they are the #1 reason why there's censorship in filmmaking and why studios pushed so hard to censor things is a little ridiculous, in my opinion. The issue I had with this thread isn't so much its content, isn't so much the points or the sentiment of the piece. Well, maybe the sentiment. Maybe it's just the sentiment of the piece. Clearly, Blockbuster was missing a huge subset of films and genres that people of all races, religions, sexuality, gender identities would have enjoyed. I'm not arguing that that is the case, because it is. Of course it is. I think what bothers me is that this person is absolutely dragging people who feel nostalgic for a piece of their life that they cherish because it meant something to them and they enjoyed it, and it maybe reminds them of better, simpler, happier times, even though it was a part of this fucking huge corporate shill stuff. Everything is. That is capitalism. That is our fucking country. That is who we are. And unfortunately, that's the case. Does it make any of it right? No. But looking back at something that happened in the 90s with a 2021 chip on your shoulder really isn't doing anyone any good.
Okay, pardon like my really noisy house, but I just wanted to say, like, this isn't like that tweet that's like, oh, well, you want to go back to the 50s where there was like milkshakes and racism. Like, I just feel like I'm trying to get to the petty point of this whole thing and not to like the deeper root of the whole thing, because for that I agree with him.
I get trying to fucking rag on the MPAA because they're still a thing and they still control a lot of the censorship and they still make those fucking rules. Rag on the MPAA. Getting pissed off and saying get this shit off my timeline because you didn't get to watch Surviving Picasso until you were 20, or because there weren't, 45 copies of The Seventh Seal at your local fucking Blockbuster. Level of like cold, lame, bummer ass fucking cynicism that nobody needs right now, like the world like fucking kind of sucks like overall, and like maybe just like let people have their memories, like why don't you just like grab a fucking fly swatter and tell us all to get off your lawn while you're at it. Let people enjoy what they enjoy. I'm sorry that you as a cinephile felt fucking slighted by Blockbuster Video. I'm sorry they didn't provide the content that would have satiated you. And I mean that. And I am sorry that they suppressed the voice of marginalized people, because that fucking sucks. And unfortunately, that is a pattern in our society. And it's a pattern that I hope that we really are fixing, and we really are mending, and we really are giving voice to. If you order things from Amazon, I'm German now, good for me. If you order things from Amazon, just as much of a fucking corporate shill as I am. I think both of those realities, the feeling nostalgic for Blockbuster and wanting to right the wrongs of our past, can exist together without having to bum everybody out. Even taking the time to look back at Blockbuster's missteps in an informational way can help inform the way we do things differently when video stores eventually make a sweeping comeback. Because that's how, progress happened. Killer thread though. Hey, you know what? At the end of the day, at least Blockbuster got theirs. Oh, wow. Did you rewind that video before you threw it in the Dropbox? 5 minutes before they closed so you didn't get that late fee?
Oh, hey!
By the way, why don't we talk about how expensive Blockbuster was? When I left Blockbuster, we were charging $4 for a fucking rental. But what do I know? Anyway, that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please feel free to give it a like. Subscribe. I make new videos whenever I feel like it. Subscribe to my Patreon. We do lives there every week. We have a watch party coming up in September where you can vote on the movie that we're going to watch together and roast the ever-loving shit out of it. We do lives there every week. We do a live here every week. On Friday, the schedule is going to be changing a little. I will keep you posted in the community tab. My social media is linked down below. All I ask is that you don't be an asshole. Thank you so much for watching. I have been your corporate whore. Be kind, rewind, and I'll see you in the next one. We meeting at Radio Shack or Borders?